Magic happens when magic happens, and we've seen it a lot with Caitlin Clark.
All right, Danielle, here we are getting going on our first podcast. Two Hoosiers who love basketball, and particularly women's basketball. So since we talk about it all the time anyway, we thought we could start recording it and make a podcast out of it. And maybe we could just start by introducing ourselves and explain why we got so interested in and love basketball so much. So why don't you go first? Then I can introduce myself.
Sure. Yeah. I grew up playing basketball, played in middle school and high school, not at a big school or anything, but enjoyed playing it. Also have that Hoosier blood in me. So I think you kind of are born with a love for basketball. And then after college, I coached middle school basketball, and that was when I started watching basketball more. I remember reading something that said, if you want to teach your kids how to play basketball, just show them UConn women's basketball. And that's kind of when I looked it up and started getting into it. And that was around 2014, 15. And that's obviously in the middle of UConn's four-peat. And then, just started watching college basketball and then the WNBA around then.
Yeah, great. So, yeah, I grew up in Indiana, born in Indiana, played basketball all my life, just pickup games with friends, played high school basketball in Indiana. And, my dad, your grandpa, was a high school teacher. And so grew up going to a lot of high school games where he taught. And then, mom and I went to IU while Bobby Knight was the coach. And I think Bobby Knight was kind of the precursor to Gino as far as the way the teams played, team offense, team defense. So I went to every IU home game while we were there. And, our claim to IU basketball fame is mom and I were at the famous game or infamous game where Bobby Knight threw the chair. It was our junior year at IU. Um, then, after college, kept playing just for the fun of it. And while at college, also just played for the fun of it. Obviously, not at any kind of level to play at IU, but then coached basketball also at the high school level to a small private school and the middle school level later. Just loved it. And then as you started watching UConn in 2016, just as your birthday present, we got tickets to go to the national championship game. It was happened to be in Indianapolis that year, and that was Brianna Stewart's final season, the end of the four-peat, and just loved the way UConn played, and you kind of got me hooked on women's basketball at that point. And yeah, so ever since that game in 2016 when we saw Stewie win her fourth straight title, I've just loved watching women's basketball, and you and I talked a lot about it, gone to games. In 2021, we went to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I have my Sweet 16 shirt on.
There you go. And Paige Beckers and
San
Caitlin Clark
Antonio.
played in their freshman seasons. So we live in the DFW area now, so we go to a lot of Dallas Wings games. So yeah, just love,
TCU women's games.
yeah, love the sport, love talking about it, love watching it, love playing it. So yeah, we thought we'd just start a podcast about it.
Yeah.
So to start off, I was thinking, it's the first week of the regular season now for the WNBA, and we're going to be focusing on WNBA over the summer since their season's going on, and particularly the Indiana Fever. Since we're Hoosiers, we're going to be talking a lot about them. But we thought maybe we could just start initially talking about some of the off-season moves and who improved the most. So as you think about, just looking at who's made what moves over the off-season, what few teams stand out to you that you think improved the most through their off-season moves?
Yeah, I mean, Indiana Fever definitely, I think, had the greatest improvement from last season to this season with the people they were able to get either through free agency or trade. It's an upgrade at pretty much every position and adding bench depth. So they were able to replace Melissa Smith with Howard, which is a big improvement, and also championship experience. Then that 3 position was kind of up in the air last year. They had Wallace starting for part of it. I think Samuelson started part of it, and Hall started a little bit. But having Bonner there with, again, championship experience and just a really versatile big who can space the floor also. And then getting Sophie Cunningham is another just good, versatile player who can kind of play 1 through 4 and just brings energy off the bench also. And then also the coaching change and front office change, just kind of they improved in every level while keeping Kelsey Mitchell, which actually was kind of their biggest move, re-signing Kelsey Mitchell, and then have a good young core with Clark and Boston.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they were very impressive after, we watched almost all their games last year. They seemed to struggle a lot until the post-Olympic break. They did start playing better, but yeah, their ceiling was with that talent they had last year was definitely they reached their ceiling. A first round exit in the playoffs. We thought that was their ceiling. They hit that. But yeah, we can talk more about the game we watched yesterday against the Chicago Sky a little bit later, but we saw those upgrades. Yeah, for sure. They looked like a much better team and a championship contender this year.
Yeah.
So else would you have as a team that really improved over the offseason?
Um, New York actually might be one, even though they didn't make a ton of huge moves, but they kept the main group that won a championship last year. And with Vandersloot leaving, they brought Cloud in. That was kind of right towards the end of the offseason that they got Cloud. And that's an upgrade over Vandersloot at this point in Vandersloot's career. She's probably not as good of a facilitator as Sloot, but an upgrade on the defensive end, more size. And yeah, it's going to be a good contributor to them. They also had pretty weak guard defense last year with starting Sloot and Ionescu. So having a good defender like Cloud is going to make them a lot tougher. And then also getting Johannes back and Rebecca Gardner is a nice bench depth piece as well.
Yeah, I agree. We loved Sloot when she was on the Sky and got to see her win the championship with Parker and love the way she plays the game. But yeah, she's obviously just at the stage of her career where she's not in her prime anymore, and yeah, that's definitely an upgrade. And then yeah, we like Johannes a lot. I mean, I think that's a great addition. Just they had her on the roster, but she sat out last year, so wasn't really a free agent move or anything. But just getting her back adds really great depth at the guard position, and
And she's the type of player that could swing a series. She's not going to give you 20 every game, but she could come in 1 quarter and give you 20 and be the difference between winning or losing a playoff series.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need those kind of players. As I think about playoff basketball, often talk about with a friend of mine just how, or sometimes you and I may talk about it too. You may need just a bench player or a starting role player to just step up and win you 1 game in a series. Just to go, maybe they average 10 points, maybe usually, but then they score 22, and it can swing a series if you have somebody who can step up and just make. You just need one exceptional game from them to swing a series, and I think Johannes gives them that possibility. Yeah,
Yeah.
and of course we like Fibic as well a lot. Love her game. That was an amazing pickup. Whatever year the Liberty added her to the roster, I mean, that's just a good young piece to have going forward.
Also very versatile, gives them a lot of flexibility, and they already have Jones and Stewie that give them so much flexibility. So yeah,
Yeah, a
very
great
great.
front court. So, all right, anybody else you wanted to call out as having particularly strong off seasons, or on the opposite end, anybody who had a bad off season?
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's a little early to say yet. There's a lot of teams that made big moves. A lot of players were moving around kind of in the last year before the CBA comes into effect. New CBA will come into effect next year. So there are a lot of big moves off season, like Griner leaving Phoenix, but it's a little early to tell if that's going to pay off yet. Phoenix got Satu and Alyssa Thomas in a trade, so that's a big move, but it's kind of early to see how that will work yet. But I did catch a little bit of their game where they beat Seattle. And the thought I had was that Alyssa Thomas is the best passer that Satu Sabali has ever played with, because
Hmm,
Dallas hasn't really had any good distributors. So I think that's going to
yeah.
help Sabali's game a lot this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I would say, one thing we've talked about also, just being in the DFW area, the Wings getting the lottery win and getting Paige Beckers. We've been a big fan of hers, obviously, since we watch a lot of UConn basketball and love the way they play the game. Um, we think Dallas has a great, starting point now, but with Paige, but boy, their front court is not great. Although
Yeah.
we like Hines Allen a lot as a Draymond Green light kind
Yeah.
of player who can really contribute. But McCowan just is not looking good. And Enrique, who obviously was a phenomenal player at Notre Dame, and she can get her buckets. But yeah, just she's she's a smaller, shorter guard also, and it's just hard sometimes for her to defend. And so, I think that Dallas is going to struggle. And even though the addition of Page is, that just is great for them long term, but we're thinking, probably for this season, not a huge impact on their record, and it's probably for the best, right? But
And they
hey,
lost Howard and Sabally, so that's pretty hard to recover from.
yeah,
But they're a few years behind where Indiana was last year, probably. So they still have a ways to go. But two other teams that kind of didn't do very well in the offseason would be Connecticut, who completely fell apart. They've been a perennial semifinal or finals team, and that's not going to happen this year. They won't make the
yeah,
playoffs this year, most likely. They lost their coaching staff. They lost all their starters. But then Vegas is the other one who didn't really do anything to help themselves out this year, and they lost three significant role players from last year, losing Tiff Hayes, Kate Martin, and Alicia Clark, um, and also switched out Kelsey Plum for Jewel Lloyd. So we'll see how that goes, but just lost depth and didn't really do anything to help Asia in the front court.
yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute. Maybe this will be the last piece on the off season, just that trade, right? I mean, that's kind of a really interesting trade between Vegas and the Sparks in Seattle. And so we have Jewel Lloyd going from Seattle to Las Vegas, have Kelsey Plum going from Vegas to Los Angeles, and then you have the number 2 pick in the draft going to Seattle. So what are your thoughts on that trade? And so far, what having seen any preseason and first regular season games, kind of
Mm.
the on court. It's early still, but just thoughts
Yeah.
on that trade.
For Seattle, it seems like there was some locker room issues last year going on, and Jewel wanted out. There was, I think, either not a lawsuit maybe, but some kind of report and investigation into the coaching staff that was initiated by Jewel, I think, and it was inconclusive. But Jewel was ready to move on, and so for them to get anything in return was probably worth it for them. And I saw just a little bit of Malanga, and she didn't do much in the minutes that I saw, but she just looks so long. And so that's more of a piece for the future for them. They already have NECA and Ezzy. They don't really need um, her to be great now, but just potentially a good long-term piece for them. Um, for Vegas, it seems like Plum must have wanted out. So, I mean, I think getting Jewel Lloyd in return is about as even of a trade as you could hope to get, probably. But Jewel hasn't really had a great efficient year in a while. So we'll see how she does and if she can help give Asia more space in the paint. And then for LA, they've kind of been trying to rebuild and rebuild for a while, and they have a good young core. So Kelsey doesn't really fit the timeline, but she does have championship experience and will be happy to be the leading scorer on that team, I think.
Yes.
We'll see how that works out for them.
Yeah. I mean, when we saw that trade in the offseason, it was surprising. I
Yeah,
mean, not really clear what the blueprint for Los Angeles is, why they got involved.
right.
I don't know why they didn't just do a straight up swap.
I
But
think
maybe they,
Kelsey had some say in where she went. Like she didn't want to go to Seattle.
okay. Yeah. Well, okay. That makes sense. But just from a basketball and timeline perspective, I was confused by what
Yeah.
Los Angeles is doing. I don't know.
Right.
They got
Why
to,
doesn't LA want that number 2 pick to grow along Cam Brink and Rikia Jackson?
yeah. Yeah. And maybe, and if the number two pick wasn't ready to break out. Tank for Juju, right? I mean, to imagine Juju on LA? I mean,
Yeah.
that would be great for the WNBA, great for that franchise. Um,
Right.
have a superstar player in one of the biggest markets in the country, and where she has played her college ball, and not sure I understand. Maybe the WNBA doesn't have rigging the draft down well enough yet,
Mhm.
like the NBA clearly has with Cooper Flag
Yeah.
going to Dallas. But that's maybe another conversation for another podcast.
Mhm.
So yeah, and Seattle's going to be interesting. I mean, we love Gabby,
Yeah.
and Skylar Diggins is a strong player defensively. She's a little pesky player, gets
Yeah.
in your grill, and she can shoot. I mean, she's a good strong player. So they got a good backcourt, got a good front court. I just don't know about their depth this year. I just
Yeah.
wonder what that's going to be like. But certainly still one of the in the top half of the WNBA. And Vegas, as long as you have Asia Wilson,
Right.
they're going to be one of the better teams, no doubt. They're going to be a championship contender. They just got too much talent on that team. I just don't know. And we were talking about this a little bit yesterday. Kia Stokes, they need to upgrade that position somehow. So we can talk about maybe uh, on another podcast, talk about uh, future trades that we think teams could maybe pursue to get better as the season goes on. But Vegas would be a team I'd like to see make a trade and really upgrade at the four, because I think otherwise they got their top four players match up with any top four in the league. But I feel like Key is a great backup center in a role player or backup four, and just a solid, fundamentally sound player, great blocker of shots. But yeah,
Right. Yeah. I
that's a
told you
whole.
they had Sabrina Ionescu guarding Kia Stokes in the game
Yeah,
the other
that's
day,
the
and
problem, right?
you have to punish Ionescu when she's playing defense because she's not a
Yeah,
strong defender, and you got to make her work. So she can't just hang out and guard someone 6 inches taller than her.
yeah, that's right. All right. Well, we started with the Indiana Fevers, the team that improved the most in the offseason, and we really are probably going to be talking most about them in our podcast this summer while we're in the WNBA season. So let's just jump in and talk about maybe the first game that we watched yesterday. What were some of the thoughts you had after you know the big game against the Chicago Sky? Because obviously the media is going to try to hype that up, but really it wasn't much of a game at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't close at all. I think they outscored them by probably 5 to 15 every quarter. It was not, yeah, not a competitive game at all. I think what stands out is, well, one, it's the first game of the season and it looked like it a little bit. There were some sloppy turnovers and some missed connections that you expect will get better as the season goes on. We were keeping track of blown assists for Caitlin, and I think we counted six, maybe two of them kind of egregious missed layups, and then a couple open threes, and then a few harder layups in traffic and on the move. But you expect over time that'll be better. It's such a quick turnaround once the season starts. Training camp, it's only a couple weeks and then a couple games, and then they're playing right away. So over time, that should improve. But definitely just the improved depth, even without Sophie Cunningham, having Bonner, Howard really makes a difference. And you feel like everyone on the team can contribute. Even Timpson, their rookie, looks like she'll be able to contribute and hold her own in the minutes she gets.
Yeah, I think at one point in the game, I think they had the full second unit in there,
Hmm.
and it felt like this is still a solid WNBA team right
Right.
here. Whereas last year at the beginning of the season with Smith at the four and Wheeler in there or Wallace, whoever they were starting, that they had three solid starters, but two just gaping holes. It's like this does not look like a
Right.
WNBA, great WNBA, even good. They were bad at the beginning of the season, and this year, even their second unit, like
Hmm.
they look good. Yeah, and I agree. Some of the sloppiness will probably get cleaned up. You got a new coaching staff in there. You've got several new players trying to mesh and just
Right.
a very short period of time in the preseason. And despite the blown assists, Caitlin still got her triple double. So, it seemed like the coaching staff was maybe pursuing her getting the triple double by putting her back in there. But also, something else. It felt like maybe they put her back in there to help Duana Bonner get that last basket. And
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
it looked like they were trying to get the ball to her, and the rest of the team, it was just they were just struggling to get a good look for her. And it felt like they put Caitlin back in there to help Bonner become the third leading scorer all time, which that was a great accomplishment, and that was fun to get to see.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun. And then also just another thing that stood out was kind of the coaching. Steph White is a much more experienced head coach, and has a lot of ties to Indiana, the Indiana Fever, the state of Indiana. But it looks like she's going to do a better job of managing Caitlin's minutes and getting her some rest. And whether they play point guard by committee, or it's Sydney Colson coming in for some minutes, it looks like hopefully Caitlin will be a little bit more well rested at the end of the year.
Yeah, and clearly Howard was a huge upgrade over Smith in that game. I don't remember what her final point totals were
Yeah, at
in the
least
game
15.
yesterday. Yeah, she looked really good. Her free throws were off, but hopefully that's just rest from the off season and she'll get back. But
Aaliyah
Bonner,
Boston. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Aaliyah Boston also looked really good. I came into this season thinking this is probably going to be a year that Aaliyah is not an all-star because whereas she's just not going to get as many touches with Howard and Bonner and Sophie. So I wasn't sure, but she looked really good. Was passing well, moving well. She and Caitlin have another year under their belt of playing together. So yeah, Boston looked good.
Yeah, Boston looked great. I mean, she's just such a smart basketball player. She knows how to fit in with other players. She's a great defender. And I think you and I talked about probably the second best passer as a big, depending on how you count Stewie, I guess. But we think maybe Alyssa Thomas is the best pure big passer in the
Mhm.
league. Stewie's kind of a wing slash big. But yeah, Boston, in our opinion, probably the second best passing big in the league. She's just sees the court well. She can space the court. She's got good mechanics on her 3-point shot, and I wouldn't mind seeing her shoot, some threes just to stretch the court and provide more spacing. But she's a smart in the pick and roll game with Caitlin, and
That's
just
another scary thing about this Indiana offense, is that literally everyone can shoot the three. Howard can shoot the three, Dantas can shoot the three. Bonner probably has the second best range in the league behind Caitlin, maybe Ionescu. Those are the top three. So they have two of the top three shooters from range on their team. Sophie, Lexi, just down the list, everyone can shoot the three. Everyone's a threat. And
yeah,
that's going to make Caitlin's life a lot easier and Kelsey Mitchell's life easier.
yeah. I mean, they just got shooters. I mean, such a huge improvement. I mean, to me, they're like, gosh, I mean, we still like Minnesota, we like New York. But the Fever may be the number 3 team in the WNBA with early returns. I mean, I just can't imagine, given the state of the rosters right now, that anybody other than the Lynx and the Liberty are better than Indiana right now.
Yeah. And we talked about how the league is such like a league of bigs. The last MVP won by a guard was Trossi in '09, I think. So like the best, it's just been all you go back and look at every championship. It's Asia, it's Dewey, it's Deladon, it's Maya. But to finally have a guard who can dominate the game so much like Caitlin can give them a bit of an edge because Minnesota doesn't necessarily have that. They have Courtney Williams and Kayla McBride who are really good, but they're not going to be able to take over a game and the same way that Caitlin can.
Yeah. So yeah, when is the next game coming up here is the Tuesday against the Dream,
That's right. That
and then
should be an easy
Thursday.
win in theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have a
So
home and home with Atlanta.
so wow, they've got 3 games here coming up in just a short period of time. So that's going to be a full week for Indiana. But Yeah. Any other thoughts on the Fever before we just talk a little bit more broadly about the rest of the league and what we've seen just in the opening weekend here?
I mean, we kind of touched on this in general, but not specifically. Maybe it's just that their defense is much improved. Last year, I think they were the 11th of 12 teams defensively or in defensive efficiency. And the backcourt, Kelsey and Caitlin, aren't great defenders, but they have a lot more help now. And I think they're going to probably be in the top half of the league for defense this year. And it's hard to imagine anyone's going to be much better than them offensively. So they could be the number one offensive team and the number 4 or 5 defensive team. And that's going to help their chances of going far quite a bit.
All right. I agree. But one more thing, maybe before we move on to the rest of it, I think maybe we buried the lead. At least according to ESPN, we buried the lead. The game was not really about how great Indiana is. It was about the kerfuffle.
Yeah, right.
So maybe 1 minute on the kerfuffle. What are your thoughts?
Uh, I think people want the WNBA to grow, and they think that silly headlines like that is what helps it grow, not people actually watching the game and seeing pretty basketball. So that's unfortunate. It was nothing. It was a hard foul that you do when you don't want to give a wide open layup. You don't let them get the shot up because you don't want them to get an and one. Um, and then Angel uh, took it personally, I guess, and kind of went at Caitlin, and Aaliyah Boston held her off and got a T for that somehow. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, my thoughts, 100% agree. It's just a hard foul. That's a clean basketball play. I mean, if you play basketball, that happens, no, no real harm there. It's just a hard foul that should have been just a two-shot foul and move on. But then Reese made a big deal out of it, and Aaliyah does the right thing as a teammate and intervenes. Can't believe Aaliyah got a technical on that. That was absolutely ridiculous and horrible officiating. And I hope that the Fever will appeal that and get that overturned. That was just a terrible call on a technical. And Aaliyah did the right thing. And, as a basketball player, as a basketball coach, that's what I want people to do. You want to step in. She wasn't trying to instigate anything. She was just trying to keep the peace by getting in between them.
And she
And
didn't push her, she didn't shove her, she just held her off.
yeah, she was just getting in between them. I mean, that's what you want peacekeepers out there. So terrible officiating, not a shocker given the state of officiating in the W.
Yeah,
But hopefully that will get rescinded.
yeah,
All
hopefully.
right. So on to maybe just a few minutes on the rest of the opening weekend and observations. We watched the Minnesota Lynx game on Friday against Dallas and Paige with her WNBA debut. So what were your thoughts from that game on Friday?
Nafisa for MVP. I'm hoping she finally gets one.
Yes.
Yeah, she deserves it for sure. And yeah, just so efficient, so consistent. And yeah, an underrated defender, even though she got Defensive Player of the Year last year. But yeah, just a really good player. Hopefully, it'll be an MVP season for her, and it certainly looked like it. Coming out with 30 something points. And Jess Shepard looked good for Minnesota. She's back with them after a couple years out. They don't have Dorka this year, but Jess can kind of step right into that role of a backup. She started this game, but Alana Smith was out. So I expect Smith will be their starter and Shepard will be playing backup. Um, and Courtney Williams actually also looked really, really good in that game. And they need her to be good to have a chance at winning again this year. A chance again, not winning again this year. They were close last year. Yeah, Dallas looked bad like I expected them to. The first half was okay. They hung in there. But then Minnesota was able to get a lot of separation in the second half. It wasn't really competitive. Paige had a rough shooting night, but you can already see that she's going to help them out a lot. They haven't really had a good guard or a consistent point guard in years. So that's a step in the right direction for Dallas.
Yeah, I agree. Minnesota looked really good. I mean, Williams, wow, she had a great game. I mean, Nafisa, I don't expect her to get 30 every game, but you expect 20. And so Williams stepping up with McBride and Smith out was great. I mean, yeah, Minnesota's strong, and we definitely think one of the top two teams in the league for sure. I think it's them in New York right now, at the top. But yeah, Dallas and Paige, we love Paige. Her college career was amazing, and hoping that she's going to be able to have her minutes managed this year. I hope Dallas will be smart. What we wish Indiana had done last year with Caitlin Clark was maybe manage the minutes a little bit more, though Caitlin Clark seems to be indestructible.
Yeah,
One of the
but
just
Paige is not.
Paige is not. I mean, Paige has had injury issues. I think she's gotten stronger, and hopefully, she won't have any more major injury problems in her WNBA career. But I hope they'll just manage her minutes and look to get a good draft slot. Tanking for Betts or AZ would
Yeah.
be something we would love. They could use a better big. Let Hines Allen play the forward. I have to play the five against bigger players, and maybe McCowan can you know go to Atlanta so they can have a really big team.
Yeah, start shooting threes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so Minnesota looked great in from the third quarter. They just took over the game. First half was close, and Dallas kept it close, but you can always tell teams can, weaker teams can sometimes just stay hovering around there for a quarter, a half, sometimes even three quarters, but there was such a gap in talent level between those two teams that it became very obvious in the second half. Um, Atlanta, I mentioned McCown going to them. Any thoughts? I didn't see their game, but um, I was surprised that Washington beat them, actually.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts from that game?
Um, I mean, yeah, I don't, it seems like kind of a bunch of random pieces that are individually skilled players, but don't really make sense together or in the system necessarily. But yeah, I think they would need Ryan Howard to have the best year of her career for it to really work at all this year. She takes a lot of shots and is often pretty inefficient. Alicia Gray is going to be good, but she probably can't be the best player on a contending team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love Alicia Gray. Love the way she plays the game. And she's a great starter on any team in the WNBA probably. But yeah, if she's your best player, you know, uh, you're in trouble probably as far as being a contender. Yeah. Howard, a lot of talent. Seems like huge ceiling, but just an inefficient player most of the time. Not a great shooter, great athlete, brings a lot of things to the court, but shooting is the most important skill in basketball, and Howard is not a great outside shooter. She sometimes can hit a three on a given night, but not consistently so far in her career. And the Atlanta coach sounds like he wants to play space and pace, and they just don't have the roster, it seems, for that. They don't have the shooters to play that style of game, whereas Indiana, it's got shooters all over the roster.
Yeah.
Minnesota's got shooters all over the roster. New York has shooters all over the roster. I mean, just going to pick out yeah, Griner and Jones and then playing a pace and space game doesn't make sense.
No. Yeah.
So then the other big game for the weekend, of course, was Vegas, New York.
Yeah.
I didn't get to watch that, but I think you saw it. So what were your thoughts from that one?
Oh, New York looked really, really good. And it was the first game, so I mean they'll probably look better. And Phoebus actually didn't do very much, but Jones was looking good. Cloud was good for them. Ionescu didn't shoot well, but yeah, they're gonna be tough. Sabally for them is a good piece off the bench. She had a really good finals game last year that helped them win. But yeah, Vegas just didn't really have it. They were letting New York get easy buckets, which you don't expect that. Vegas is usually a really good defensive team. And they're returning most of, or at least a lot of their team. So you'd think that that would look a little sharper. But yeah, Jewel Lloyd wasn't able to do too much, so it might take time to work her in and figure out what her role is going to be on the team. Um, Jackie Young, I thought was looking good, but then I looked at the box score and she shot like 5 for 19 or something. So not an efficient game for her, but it's good to see her taking a lot of shots because she's a good shooter.
Yeah, well, we've got a little soft spot in our heart for Jackie since she's a Hoosier also,
Yeah.
and we probably are looking at her through rose-colored glasses sometimes. But I mean, I think she's one of the top 5 to 7 players in the WNBA. You know, just a great all-around player, a Hoosier who just plays the game hard. You know, can shoot the ball, can defend, a team concept player. You know, love her game. But I think you're right. You know, may take them a while to kind of mesh the pieces together there. But and they got Asia Wilson. They're going to be tough out
Yeah.
for any team. You know, I mean, you got Asia, Jackie, you got Gray, get Jewel Lloyd meshed in there. I mean, that's a great top 4 to have. And you know, they play great def. You got with Kia Stokes alongside Asia and Jackie, the 3 premier defenders at their positions, and
Yeah.
so you know that they're just going to be tough with their defense. You know, it's going to be hard for them to not be in every game. You know, just because their defense, I think, will keep them in games.
Right.
So yeah. So anything in the upcoming week in particular we should be looking forward to? Is it the New York game next Saturday? Is that the big game?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just interesting at this point because there's so much movement in the off season, just seeing what teams look like with the different players. But yeah,
Yeah. So all right. So you know, kind of the plan for the podcast will the goal is to do it once a week. Kind of talk about the past week, particularly the Fever games that happened in the week. You know, and a little bit about the WNBA in general, and maybe looking ahead specifically to anything on the Fever schedule. So they've got a full week coming up here. It looks like 3 games in 6 days, with New York being the last one. So that's going to be, yeah, quite a week. So hopefully we'll have a lot to talk about next week.
yeah,
I'm
should be
looking
fun.
forward to it. Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Danielle, and we will be talking more hoops next weekend.